Where Did the Road Go this month is sponsored by two really awesome people, Super Infra Man and Allison Cook. If you want to join them or just become a patron, wheredidtheroadgo.com.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And real quick before we get into things, I always put this stuff at the end and feel like I should put it at the beginning sometimes. If you have stories you want to share for listener stories episodes, email them to stories@wheredidtheroadgo.com. General stuff, you can contact me at contact@wheredidtheroadgo.com. There's also booking at wheredidtheroadgo.com if you're someone who's written a book or something and wants to come on the show. And of course, always have to say, if you want to help out the show, become a patron. It's only $3 a month, and it helps out fantastically, and you get a ton of extra stuff every month. So, for tonight's show, I have Mr. A.P. Strange.
Hey.
And Super Infra Man.
Hello.
Sometimes known as Saxon. And has absolutely nothing to do with the band.
It does not, unfortunately.
Have you listened to the band yet?
You know, I still haven't. I need to. I got to do that for a couple of the folks on Instagram, too, that were just like, I let them down by not knowing about the band.
I'll send you a couple good songs from the band.
Okay.
Anyway, tonight, thanks to A.P. Strange, we're going to talk about this Alien Animals book, which we only discovered by when we went through the first Mysteries of the Unexplained show. And a lot of the stories were from alien animals. And then we were like, we need to find this book. There were some great stories in here, and AP happened to have a copy. And my friend and listener, Matt Festa, actually got a cheap copy somewhere, read it, and sent it to me, but I haven't had a chance to read it. So we're going to rely on Mr. Strange for what we're going to deal with in the book. He also has the cooler cover.
Yeah, I got the hardcover with the paper, the dust jacket. And I mean, I'll send a picture or whatever you can use on the social media or the show notes. But I think Chris, when we were talking about it before, Chris Ernst said it looked like the Avengers as led by Bigfoot, yeah, like the Avengers of cryptids.
It was was so cool it made him swear.
It did, yeah. It does look like that.
Blank out a square.
Yeah, Bigfoot's in the middle. There's a big cat. There's a devil dog or a black dog, Loch Ness monster, and something with back.
Like an Owlman.
Owlman, yes.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here looking at I'm sitting here looking at mine, and you're like, "Oh, the cover's amazing," and I'm like, "It's just that one Nessie picture." Which is what mine has on it, like one of the famous Nessie pictures, which is cool and all, but I wouldn't call it amazing.
Yeah, you know what's funny is I looked on the inside cover of this book, trying to figure out who the artist was that drew that amazing picture, and it's the same credits as the copy you have, because it says cover image is like courtesy of the 40 Picture Library, and it like the Loch Ness monster as taken by Doc Shiels.
Huh.
So it says that it's that cover, but it's not.
Wow. Yeah.
But I did end up looking into it, and the artist that drew this cover, it was named Gino D'Achilles.
Okay.
And he was a fantasy artist, and he did a lot of like Edgar Rice Burroughs covers and some Sherlock Holmes and stuff like that. So a lot of fantasy and historical fiction. So I looked into some of his other images. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. Like I thought the style looked familiar. It's vaguely Frazetta-esque. It's a little bit like Frank Frazetta. But, he did covers, this Gino D'Achilles did covers for like John Carter on Mars. And books like that. So I'm like, oh yeah, I've seen this before. I think I've seen examples of this guy's artwork. So
this book was published in 1981 and authored by Janet and Colin Bord.
Yep. The Bords the boards I think get overlooked a lot. Like I don't hear people talk about them that much, but they did a lot of really cool stuff.
I never heard of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were like more well known in the UK.
Oh, well, that makes sense. Yeah.
Something that's always been frustrating to me is like we speak the same language, right? but there's a lot of like British Fortean stuff that like I never heard of until way later, or like until I was really looking around on the internet, and then find out like it's hard to get here.
Yeah.
You know, like stuff like FW Holidays books are like not nearly as common here, or you don't hear about like the Warminster thing, or
TC
I'm trying to think about it. What's that?
TC Lethbridge.
Yeah. There's a whole lot of stuff that's just like British that, even though it's still in the same language, we like it doesn't get covered here by the paranormal sphere in the same way that our stuff does. So that's that.
It's a you know, the United States has this United States centric sort of view of things, and I think that's why. And even like Canada and England get kind of pushed to the side.
Right. And I mean, I think maybe it used to be a little different because I think there might have been some wider distribution and sharing of the ideas back in like the 70s. Yeah. But some of the stuff I'm like, oh, who's this guy? And then you read about it and you're like, oh, well, everybody knew him back then. You know? It's a lot more crossover. Because if you look at 14 Times in the 70s, it's like you can find stuff from Lauren Coleman or John Keel or Robert Anton Wilson. And so there was a lot more crossover between the two countries back then. I don't know. But speaking of which, yeah, so the boards were involved with the 14 Times magazine. Prior to that, Janet Bord was writing for like Flying Saucer Review and a couple other UFO zines in the 60s and 70s. And that's how she met Colin before they got married, was they both had an interest in UFOs. Colin was more of a photographer and a writer, and Janet was like an editor and a writer. So she did a lot of editing for various magazines, and like I said, contributing to Flying Saucer Review, which like there's another one that's a British magazine that was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And if you can find old copies of that, that's great. You can find a lot of PDFs online, which is what I often have to settle for. But
yeah, but they were commissioned. That option now.
Yeah. I mean, that is a good thing. And like if you go on Scribed and things like that, sometimes you can find old issues. They were commissioned to write or collect photos and captions and do research for a book called Mysterious Britain that they ended up just kind of writing together, and that's kind of what got their name out there. So they were covering their first book was covering a lot of like mystical and important sites in the United Kingdom. It focused partly on like ley lines and those ideas, which was like a big interest of theirs, and the folklore behind a lot of the places. They were also the custodians of the 14 Picture Library.
Oh,
which these days is I think Janet Bord is mostly retired. She's still around, but I don't know how active she is. And Colin passed away, I think, I didn't write it down, but in the early 2000s. So the 14 Picture Library is currently at the Archives for the Unexplained in Sweden, which is a great place for it. Yeah. Speaking of online places, afu.se is the Archives for the Unexplained page, and you can find PDF copies of like old flying saucer zines from around the world there, and old newspaper clippings and all kinds of stuff. You can buy books from their library, so that's an awesome site. So yeah, I wanted to get some background on the boards.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I keep thinking some like soul is going to be kind enough to take a lot of these zines and put them in PDF form online, but no luck yet.
No, they do though, and that's what I'm saying. Go to the afu.se, and you can find a directory of tons of zines. UFO researcher Isaac Coy has like tirelessly worked to scan and catalog this stuff and put it on the website. So yeah, I mean, it's a gold mine.
Nice. Yeah. All right. So what stuff did you want to cover in here, AP?
Okay. Well, I made a ton of notes, so this will make it kind of easy because I can just throw out names of monsters and things, and you guys can tell me which ones you want to hear. So before we do that, though, I had a few notes. Just the title "Alien Animals," they basically we think of it the same way you'd think of cryptids.
Yeah.
Right. in general. The boards had a little bit more of a supernatural acceptance of things and folkloric. So they would include things from folklore and monsters and all different possibilities for these things rather than just biological, unexplained animals.
Right.
So,
the flesh and blood stuff.
Right. So the categories. So basically, their criteria is that it's unidentified or unidentifiable, out of place. So like with the alien big cats, that's the main thing, is that they shouldn't be there.
Right.
One of the other criteria is that they vanish without a trace, and there's no physical evidence left behind. Well, I mean, not no physical evidence, but they can't be captured or killed, it seems.
Right. And sometimes the footprints just disappear.
Right.
They just stop.
So the main categories they cover in the book are lake monsters, out-of-place big cats, large black dogs, giant birds / birdmen, birdwomen, and number 5 here, big hairy mammals. So they say BHM a lot, or anthropoids. So obviously including Bigfoot, mostly Bigfoot, but other big hairy mammals as well. So I got a whole list. I was looking at this list and chuckling about it because I just was writing a short description to remind myself what it was. You had a show about the big black dogs, Seriah, right?
I don't think we've ever done. I've had Watson on. I can't remember his first name for his Mist book, but I've never had him on for the dogs book he wrote. I have a big black dog book from Patrick Harper's sister, but I have yet to read it or have her on. I don't think we've ever done a show on big black dogs.
Huh. Okay. Well, that's good to know, because I was like, I think the majority of the stories I picked are big black dog stories.
Oh, okay.
Because they're all so good. And also, that was a bit of a synchronicity for me when I first got this book, because around that time, somebody had told me a story that was kind of big black dog related, and I wanted to look into it for him. And I didn't really have much in my book, so when this arrived in the mail, and I'm like, oh, there's a whole chapter on black dogs in here, sweet.
Nice.
So we'll start with, let's see, I got headless ghost dog, human face dogs, black Shuck.
Just
black dog.
Start with the first one you got there.
Yeah.
Okay, Paige.
I mean, what was it? Headless ghost dogs?
Headless ghost dog was pretty good. It's better if you actually have the picture in front of you. This picture to me might have an explanation. I could probably come up with one.
Okay.
But it's called the Tingewick ghost dog. Its head seems to just fade away above its neck, so the body itself is visible in the picture. Like the head is kind of transparent. It says, from its posture, it is apparently watching the activity above it and could not even be wagging its tail, which is also hazy. The dog did not appear on other photographs taken at the same time of the same scene. So this account here is this man was taking a picture of a tea party in Tingewick, Buckinghamshire. Arthur Springer was a retired CID inspector from Scotland Yard sometime around 1916. He was just taking a picture of the tea party, and he didn't see an animal there at the time. Apparently, nobody remembered a dog being there. It was only when the plates were developed that the headless dog became apparent. So this is 1916 photos too.
Okay.
Nobody recognized. Yeah, no one recognized the ghost dog, and there are no similar dogs living in the village. So I imagine if there was a headless dog in the village, people would know about it. But it tends to stand out. And it says in parentheses, there are a number of cases on record where apparitions have been photographically recorded but were not visible at the time the exposure was made. This and other incomplete ghosts again tend to demonstrate the arbitrary nature of the manifestation. So
what do you think might explain it?
Well, especially back then, you would need to open the aperture on a camera to expose the film for a length of time to get the image printed on the plate properly. Right. Which would kind of mean everybody had to stand pretty still in order to get the picture taken. I'm not sure how true that was in 1916. I'm not a photography expert. But suppose that this dog appeared and was just moving its head around a lot, but the rest of it was staying still.
Right.
I think that's why there was a note about the tail wagging, because the tail is very visible in the picture. Seems to be solid, but the head is the part that's transparent.
Okay.
So you'd imagine the tail would be wagging.
Yes.
If he was moving his head around and trying to like steal something from the table, you know. But I don't know. It's kind of a spooky photo. I like it. It's just it's a little photo. This mid-sized dog is like right next to this woman's leg, and you can't hardly see its head at all, but the rest of it is right there in the frame. And if the participants and the photographer are to be believed, there was no dog there when they took the picture.
Right.
So that's a good little ghost dog.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
All right. So the next one on your list?
I had human face dogs.
Oh.
That's too good to not include.
Yeah, no kidding.
It says, even stranger, some black dogs are not all dog. Yeah, so I should note the part of this is a little different than the Mysteries of the Unexplained ones that you did, because it's written kind of the stories aren't necessarily separated out that way. So
right.
I'm kind of dropping in with excerpts here.
That's fine.
In a traditional story from Lincolnshire, the site of a former cottage at Nath was haunted by a black dog with a woman's face, while a dog with a monk's head haunts the area around Clapton Hall near Great Billings, Suffolk. I apologize to anyone in the UK if I'm pronouncing all these things wrong. These seem to have been permanent features. So these were dogs that were seen time and again, a black dog with a woman's face and a dog that had a monk's head on it. And they were always seen that way.
Wow.
But there are more reports describing dogs which changed their form before the witness. Sometimes the new form was that of another animal, as happened in 1905 at Hoe Benham near Newbury, Berkshire, when on a moonlit night the witness saw a large black dog turn into a black donkey, which vanished after rearing up on its hind legs. More often, though, the new form was human. A tale from Lowestoft, Suffolk, tells of a black dog which turned into an evil Italian. I gotta laugh at that. While swimming with a boy in the sea. Another black dog was seen on 9 successive evenings by a plowboy at Lower Quinton, Warwickshire. Appeared in the form of a headless woman dressed in a silk gown on the last occasion. I found that one a little confusing. So there was a black dog that was seen the last time they saw it, it turned into a woman, a headless woman, or it just appeared as a headless woman. It's kind of strange the way it's written. In Nova Scotia, a black dog was often seen at Roos Brook. Sometimes only a bright light was seen, and on one occasion, a man who had been drinking and so felt brave turned to ask the thing why it was following him. It pounced on him and nearly choked him to death. Afterwards, he said it looked like a black dog, but when it got him by the throat, it seemed more like a person.
Huh.
So then it gets into like witches sometimes used to change into black dogs, and we return to the art of shape-shifting in chapter 6. The devil was also thought to change himself into a black dog.
Right.
In fact, some people also thought the black dogs were manifestations of the devil, and their descriptions reflect this belief.
Interesting.
The black dog of Craig and Orden and Sutherland, though at first appearing as a dog, later on seemed to have acquired a hideous face in human form with horns sticking out of its head. Oh, wow. And there are many other instances in the lore where the identification of a black dog with the devil is even more explicit than this. Huh. So the large black dog chapter in this book is phenomenal. What do you got? What are your thoughts? I'd like to hear some thoughts on human face dogs.
So I was going to throw out. I came across. So this is one of those things I did not plan to do, but I was in Cambridge. This is probably 5 years ago now, and we were at a little kind of village next to Cambridge. I had a family friend that was getting married, and they had a black dog story there, but it seemed like there wasn't much about it. I just saw a plaque next to the church that mentioned it, but it was more of a positive story. Like the dog had done something to help somebody there, but had been killed and still roamed around. But I kind of love that contrasted with how scary all these stories are from the book, especially when you got people with human face dogs. I mean, that's I don't know.
Yeah, I'm kind of picking out the weirdest ones. So this church that you were talking about, you said it was in Cambridge?
Yeah, Cambridgeshire.
Okay, yeah. So, one of the most famous black dog stories is related to a church. I think I have it here. It goes back to like the 1500s.
I got to correct myself here. I said that whatchamacallit sister wrote a book on black dogs, but it's actually it's out of place cats.
Ah, okay.
Patrick Harper's sister did one on out of place cats, not black dogs.
Okay, well, I got some of those stories, but I didn't collect as many of those.
Yeah, that's fine.
The reason for that is that those often seem to happen in flaps. So what you end up with is like pages and pages about one particular black cat sighting that went on for months,
right?
Or not black cat, but like puma sighting. But let's see. I think it was Black Shuck. Hold on. This is the black dog which wreaked such havoc in Bungay and Blytheburg churches in 1577 did so during a terrible thunderstorm. And the other appearances of strange animals in churches also took place during storms.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, that's the famous one. And I thought I had it, but I guess not.
I've also heard stories about black dogs showing up to lead people to safety and then disappearing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with this story in particular, it was like the storm came and the dog seemed to come with the storm. So it was Sunday, 4th August, 1577. During the morning when people were at church, a terrible storm arose, and in Bungay church, a black dog suddenly appeared. His presence was fatal, for he passed between two members of the congregation, and as they were kneeling upon their knees and occupied in prayer, as it seemed, wrung the necks of them both at one instant clean backward, insomuch that even at a moment when they kneeled, they strangely died. Another man was injured when the black dog gave him such a gripe on the back that therewith all he was presently drawn together and shrunk up, as it were a piece of leather scorched in a hot fire, or as the mouth of a purse or a bag drawn together with a string. The man, albeit he was in so strange a taking, died not, but as it is thought is yet alive. Sorry, that's all written in like weird Middle English.
Yeah. It makes me think that that ball lightning appeared as a black dog.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. Yeah. Let's see, on the selfsame day in like manner into the parish church of another town called Blybury, not above 7 miles distant from Bungay above said, and the like thing entered in the same shape and similitude, where placing himself upon a main balk or beam whereon some ye rude did stand, he gave a swing down on ye church, and there also as before slew 2 men and lad, and burned the hand of another person that was there amongst the rest of the company, of whom divers were blasted. This mischief thus wrought, he flew with wonderful force to no little fear of the assembly out of the church in a hideous and hellish likeness. So this particular church has marks on the door, like scratch marks that were supposed to have been from the black dog.
Okay.
And it's still there now, so I didn't know if that was the same church.
It might be.
Huh.
There's a picture in here where it's like the black dog is on the weather vane.
Oh, cool.
So I don't know if that rings any bells for you, Saxon, but I guess it's probably not the same place.
I can't tell. I'm actually looking at the places in my album on my phone to see if I have a picture of the plaque, and I can't seem to find it. So I'm going to give up on it because it's keeping me from participating. But I'll see if I can find a picture of the plaque and send it to you, Seriah, and I'll post it on Twitter, AP.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah, but it was one of those things where I knew about the general idea of the black shuck, but I always thought kind of like the Hound of Baskerville sort of idea, where it was a bad omen, and this seemed to be more of a it wasn't so negative, I suppose, but I'm sorry, that's not much of a memory to use though.
And the thing is, like, seriously, it sounds like a plasma formation, but I'm not aware of plasma, appearing as if it's black.
Wait, you have a black dog sighting, Seriah, right?
What's that?
You have a black dog sighting.
No.
Oh, I thought you saw a dog that like stood in for a black dog or something like that.
No.
Oh, was that somebody else on the show?
Maybe. I don't remember ever seeing a black dog. I saw a real black dog that was gigantic, but it was a real dog.
Yeah, okay, I think that's what I'm thinking of.
I mean, because it was one of those things where we were walking down the road, and there was this huge, it must have been a St. Bernard or something, and it was mostly black, and it was in the ditch next to the road, and then we looked at it and went, that seems like a big dog, and then it came out of the ditch, and we went, oh, that's a really big dog. But I don't think I had any paranormal dogs.
The black dogs in these stories, the way they kind of differentiate the large black dogs that they're talking about from what would be a normal dog is, first of all, the size. They're bigger. Sometimes like shaggier, and glowing red eyes is a common feature with these.
Right.
Sometimes there's a noxious breath or smell that's often reported with these, like a phosphorus kind of or sulphurous kind of smell. Sometimes they vanish in plain sight, just kind of like disappear into thin air. There's reports of invisible dogs, or they can, as we were talking about already, shapeshift and shift into another animal. So, in fact, I had one that was was talking about a fox that could change shape into other animals. That was actually in America, though. I think that was in the mountain areas down south.
I just did a quick Google search on like black plasma or stuff, and apparently there's some Minecraft guy who goes by the name of Black Plasma. So it's like Black Plasma Studios, and that's all that comes up. Just on the off chance that people had reported, plasma as being black, because then that would lead to some, to potentially some kind of explanation of why this stuff actually sounds like ball lightning in the form of a black dog. Right down to the burns and stuff.
Well, the other thing is it's not always storms. A lot of times they're found at crossroads.
Right. That connects to Hecate as well.
Oh, does it? Yep. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and particularly along like ley lines. So Janet and Colin Bord were way into the Alfred Watkins old straight track ley line theories. So they connect a lot of this stuff in general, but particularly the black dogs to the ley lines.
Okay.
They actually include a map of England as well that has all the different black dogs and their local names. So Shuck or Black Shuck is just one area. It says it's Norfolk, but other black dogs are called like Skeff, Old Shock, Shooky Dog, Scarf is one, Galley Trot, Maudie Die, like Maudie Do. Let's see, Trash is one of them, just Trash or Guy Trash. Skriker is Lancashire and Yorkshire. Bargeist or Bargeist.
I think that's a black metal band.
What's that?
I think that's a black metal band.
Yeah, well, that's what it probably means. There's one called Hooter and Harry Jack. So
Harry Jack, I like Harry Jack.
I mean, I'm not even going to attempt the Welsh one.
Right. When you were talking earlier about the human-faced dogs, I mean, those seem way more apparitional. I mean, just because, dogs don't have human faces, so if you have a dog with a human face, it seems like it must be a manifestation of some sorts.
Yeah, for sure. I think those might be more folkloric as well. As I said, the boards were collectors of folklore as well, so they included a lot of those stories where maybe other authors wouldn't have. Right.
Right.
And I think that's coming around more now, like especially with like, Tim Renner and Josh Cutchin.
Absolutely.
Collecting a lot of stuff for their books. And I think people are starting to incorporate more of it in again, but they certainly weren't the kind of flesh and blood monster hunter types that were going to exclude the folktales. So
nor should you.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this book great. It's really fun.
Yeah,
fun to read.
The dogs with the human faces reminds me of the reverse of that, of the dog-headed people that show up in different folklore too. Is there even like a saint that has a dog head in some of the depictions of it? I think. Let's see.
Yeah, I've heard of that. There is a saint that's just a dog too.
It's just a dog.
Well, yeah.
It's Saint.
There's one sainted dog, although it's not.
Go ahead.
Not officially. There's an unofficial dog saint.
Okay.
Is it a Saint Bernard?
But no, it's not. It's actually not. I forget. Actually, I heard about it a little while ago. I didn't want to spend the whole time on dogs though, because there's so much in this book. I got one more though that I think is really interesting. Right. This one's a white dog that appeared on the anniversary of a UFO sighting to the witness. It says in Burnley, Lancashire, a woman who had previously sighted a UFO and whose husband had been seen a shadowy figure in their home was awoken at 2:25 a.m. on the 23rd of August, 1977, exactly a year after her UFO sighting, even to the minute. By a knocking on the door. She went and opened it, but there was only a big white dog staring in at her. She went away and the knocking started again, but this time when she opened the door, there was nothing there. Going upstairs, she put out the lights and waited with the window open. When the knocking began again, she looked out, but there was no one there. The next day, a UFO was reported as having been seen over the town the previous night.
Oh,
that's cool.
So it says also in South Africa, the United States, there have been reported incidents linking black dogs even more closely with UFOs. So,
which makes no sense if UFOs are, alien.
Right.
There's a story in Lauren Coleman's book, Mothman and Other Curious Encounters, about like a flying saucer landing in a field and just a bunch of dogs getting out.
Really? I haven't heard that one.
It's like a dozen dogs just get off the saucer and run away. I think that might be in here too, actually. But it's weird. The dog / flying saucer connection. So
one of the Russian cosmonaut dogs fell through a portal, got a UFO built.
I do wonder about that. Hell yeah. That's dogs. Do you guys want to talk some lake monsters? Because that's like my favorite thing.
Absolutely.
Oh, let's do it.
Lake monsters never get enough attention.
No, they don't. And I'm a big Nessie fan. And I think just to make sure I do have time, because I've meant to talk about this man on podcasts easily half a dozen times and just didn't get to it. This book includes stuff from a man called Tony Doc Shiels, Doc being kind of like his stage name. So the copy that you have, Seriah, with the picture of Nessie, that was a picture that Doc Shiels took.
Right.
Of the Loch Ness monster. So I have the excerpt of him taking that picture. He said he was standing at Urquhart Castle when a sleekhead broke the surface rather less than 100 yards away. Part of the neck showing above the waterline must have been around 4 or 5 feet long. Color of the animal was greenish brown with a paler underside. Skin texture smooth and glossy. The animal was visible for no more than 4 or 5 seconds. It held itself very upright, very still, except for a slight turning of the head and a straightening of the neck before it sank very smoothly below the surface, and powerful neck muscles. And he managed to quickly fire off 2 frames of a high-speed ectochrome, and the transparencies, let's see. And he also photographed Morgor in Falmouth Bay off of Cornwall. A little about Doc Shiels, because he's a very interesting character.
Yeah.
He took that picture of Nessie. He took another picture of a sea serpent called Morgor. He was a surrealist, a stage magician, jazz musician, and a self-styled wizard.
You say was. Did he pass away?
Well, no, I mean, these are all... No, he's still alive, I believe.
Okay.
I don't know how active he is nowadays, but I actually just found out in prepping for the show that I think there was a documentary made about him a couple of years ago.
Oh.
But if you look on YouTube, you can find old appearances he did on different TV shows. And I shared one on Twitter recently, and it's pretty great because his whole thing was he came up with this concept called Monstermind, where he got together a network of psychics all over the world. I think maybe just like 5 or 6 of them. And the idea was that they were going to put their intention out to psychically contact the monsters in their locale and try to get them to appear. So Doc claims he did this at Loch Ness. And when I first looked into him, when I was reading this book the first time, I started looking around on the web and I found a newspaper article that said, I had Nessie under my spell, claims wizard. And I'm like, all right, whoever this guy is, I love him. Yeah, I mean, that was the whole plan, is that he was going to, use his psychic and magic abilities to conjure the Loch Ness monster. And he claims that he did. And he did the same thing with the sea serpent in Cornwall, Morgor. And you can see that in the video that I shared. I'll have to find the link for it and pass it along. But he's just kind of standing on the beach going like, Morgor, Morgor. And he enlisted the help of several nude witches that
of course,
because you got to have that. So, I mean, he's like a really silly guy, right?
Yeah.
But I absolutely love him. And he did kind of get results, because around the same time he was trying to summon Morgor, that was where you started getting sightings of the Owlman in Monaghan in the same place, Cornwall. It's still in Cornwall. So, and then other psychics that were part of the project, I guess had some level of some level of success in their locales. I think one of them was in like Russia, some in America maybe, but a lot of them dropped out because of what they said was psychic fatigue or psychic backlash, I guess was the word.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So okay, so the Monstermind experiments in 1977 went from January to February. Involved psychics in Britain, India, the United States, USSR, and Mexico. So there was a water monster sighted in Calcutta. There were some Loch Ness monster sightings. A sighting in Loch Shiel, which that's a weird synchronicity. Doc Shiels, Loch Shiel. The photographs were taken of the Loch Morgor creature and of Morgor. So they said they did a second experiment in May, and it was supposed to last 3 months, but there was a psychic backlash suffered by several participants in the first experiment. A number of them didn't take part, and then Doc dropped out after a while. But he got the pictures of the Loch Ness monster during that time, one of which was the cover on Seriah's copy of the book.
Yeah. He's 84 years old now. His website does not work. And according to
not surprising.
Wikipedia, he is an artist, a magician, a writer, a busker, a psychic, entertainer, and a hoaxer.
Okay.
Wait, so hoaxer's back on there, huh?
I mean, there's nothing in
What's
the
that?
article that suggests he hoaxed anything, but he's listed as a hoaxer.
Oh, I mean, he's widely considered a hoaxer. But because the picture of Morgor isn't very convincing to me. I mean, it's just a black shape on the water. But he has never admitted to faking anything.
Okay.
So he says that the methods that he used, just getting some sky-clad witches on the beach and yelling for the monster, and the boards reference the concept of the tulpa. So they were wondering if maybe the Monstermind team was creating the monsters rather than summoning them.
Right.
Just kind of like if they weren't already being called, they were just being invented,
I remember reading an article in Fate where someone had a Loch Ness sighting where the face of it just kept morphing as they were watching it. And, you think about that, and the fact that these monsters shouldn't be able to live in these lakes suggests that there's also a more paranormal element to their existence.
Mm-hmm. Some of the stuff from Shiels, I found a picture from 1984 Fortean Times where he's got a hypothetical cephalopod version of Nessie that's sort of like a, strange-looking squiddy kind of thing.
Yeah, the octopus.
Like that. Yeah.
Yep.
But have you guys, I've talked about this guy forever ago, but there is, Ted Holiday did a book called The Goblin Universe and some other things like that.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I almost feel like he was kind of aping maybe Shiels in a way because he performed an exorcism on the loch with a priest. But one of his theories.
That's in here.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yep.
And then one of his things was he thought that Nessie was like a snail or something like that, like some type of mollusk.
A telemonstrum, the Tully monster. Yeah, yep. Yeah, that's all referenced in here because the Reverend Dr. Donald Owman was exercising the Loch Ness with Ted Holiday there. He was exercising the spirit of evil, he said, and it wasn't so much the monsters, unless they were there to cause a malevolent effect on human beings. Doc Shiels has a prescription for psychic backlash, though. He says there's a defense against it because I guess Oman and Ted Holiday suffered that kind of psychic backlash. Shiels says monster raising can cause illness. This happened to several members of my Monstermind team, and I know it happened to such stalwart hunters as Tim Dinsdale and Ted Holiday. Why? The simple answer is that in all things magical, you pay for what you get. The very best protection against this disturbing type of psychic backlash is humor. The protection, in turn, has to be paid for. So, although my humorous wizardry is successful, it is not taken too seriously by the monster hunting establishment. And that makes about as much sense to me as anything else, right? Like, if you're a ridiculous person and you're doing ridiculous things to achieve what most people would consider a fantastic result, like a fantastically ridiculous result, you may very well achieve that result because nobody's going to believe you, right?
Right.
Yeah.
As long as you're willing to accept that, that's the price you pay. and you can laugh about it, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, you know what? And gosh, some different chaos magic stuff I read would talk about like, banishing, where you would go and like tell jokes and laugh and play, comedy routines. So it's like totally changing your mindset afterwards too. I never thought about that as something that would carry over to the psychic backlash.
Well, right, but I mean, it's kind of a way of thinking, right? This is something this is something I practice in my life a lot more now, and it's made my life a lot more fun. May have been partially inspired by Shiels, but and it's a whole other topic entirely. I did a Project Archivist episode about this. It's just like the humor in magic is like doing like hilarious magic, doing things that are absolutely absurd and just funny can get those results, and absolutely nobody's going to believe you because it's so silly.
Yep.
And it's been working for me, so I'm going to roll with it. But Shiels is a very entertaining character, and like I said, he's just he was writing for 14 times at the time. And the funny thing with the boards here in the book is they just write about him as though you know who he is. Like, they don't bother describing him too much. Right.
Well, also the time period, he would have been in the news a lot anyway.
Yeah, he was in the news. I actually have some clippings from in my files of some of his exploits from an old collection of clippings that I got. And yeah, he was in the news often enough. He was on TV sometimes. So people knew who he was. And he was also regularly writing for 14 Times. He had the Ask a Wizard column. So
nice.
Yep. So yeah. Doc Shiels, personal hero of mine in some ways. He was also kind of a drunk. So, I hope he's still doing that part, but I don't know.
Well, if he is, he's made it to 84 doing it. So.
But say work for him if that's the case.
Yeah.
And you want to talk about the Owlman a little too.
The what?
The Owlman.
The Owlman's kind of connected to Shiels too. And after reading the book and then looking into it, I kind of became convinced that the Owlman was just kind of created by Doc Shiels. It might have just been like something that he made up. But other people have convinced me otherwise. So I guess there's been other sightings. And you said you had a guest on that talked about it once, right? Yeah,
I don't remember who it was, but I know we discussed it at some point.
Because I know there's a guy that has a book that's all about like the Owlman or like bird-like humanoids.
I don't know. Did we talk about it the first time you were on? Maybe with the other.
Oh,
guys
maybe.
Maybe that was what I'm thinking of.
Huh?
Maybe. But there's some great drawings in here of it. I think the first sighting was by a 12-year-old and 9-year-old girl, and the feathered birdman was just kind of like hovering over the church. So the church is near a cliff edge, the slope of which down to the stony beach is covered with trees. The next sighting of Owlman was made on the 3rd of July, this time among the trees. 2 girls, both aged 14, were camping in the wood when they heard a strange hissing noise. Looking around, they saw a figure standing among the pine trees only 20 yards away. Sally said it was like a big owl with pointed ears as big as a man. The eyes were red and glowing. At first, I thought it was someone dressed up playing a joke trying to scare us. I laughed at it. We both did. And then it went up in the air and we both screamed. When it went up, you could see its feet were like pinchers. So that's kind of creepy too, like 2 curved toes.
Right.
Yeah.
The other description from Barbara, the other girl, it's true, it was horrible, a nasty owl face with big ears and big red eyes. It was covered in gray feathers. The claws on its feet were black. It just flew straight up and disappeared into the treetops. So they both drew it. And it's described as flying similarly to like Mothman, where
that's what I was gonna say.
Where it doesn't have to like flap its wings, it just shoots away. You know? Like stretches the wings out and flies.
Almost like it's levitating.
Yeah. And that's pretty upsetting, I think. Like just the physics defying nature of that would be like mind bending enough to really throw you off guard, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So that's kind of why I love the Bad Beast of Kent, because he's like the Owlman of Cornwall. What's wild is, Cornwall's basically like on the complete southwest tip of England. And then Kent is all the way on the west tip of England. Kent's on the east side of England. Like they're about as far away from each other as they can be. But the Bat Beast of Kent was sighted, I guess, in 1963. And he looks very much like, no head, just wings and feet, that kind of thing. But it's in that same, set of features that Mothman has and Owlman has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say that they're similar without looking like necessarily one another.
Yes.
And that similar behavior makes me think, the thing is, if you're gonna make up a story about a giant owl, I'm pretty sure you're gonna have its wings flap.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, they actually have a compare and contrast list with Owlman versus Mothman in here too.
Oh,
Cool.
So the commonalities are they both take off vertically, like we were talking about. They both have red eyes. They're both gray in color. Both have wings instead of arms. Both are man-shaped and sized, like roughly the shape and size of a man. The obvious differences are that Mothman doesn't have a head that's easy to make out, while the Owlman did,
right.
and it was described. Mothman's feet aren't really ever described very well, but the witnesses of Owlman saw that they were like black pinchers or claws.
Mm-hmm.
The Owlman was only seen in that one part of Cornwall, like a very small part of Cornwall, and Mothman was seen kind of, so the Owlman was seen just around that church, but Mothman was seen in the TNT area, chasing cars, further away outside of Point Pleasant. So it was.
Do we have any disasters at the end of the Owlman sightings?
No, I don't think so. I don't think anything crazy happened in Cornwall at the end of it. No. So
that's. I've always been curious about that because, I can never decide if this is revisionist or not of the Blackbird of Chernobyl, which basically was supposed to have foretold the Chernobyl disaster. That they saw Mothman or something like that around there, in the weeks leading up. But I've never really found anything that set that in history, and it wasn't somebody just making more like a creepypasta story about it.
I think they made up a bunch of that stuff for the movie.
Okay. Did they do that in the Mothman Prophecies movie?
No, but when they were promoting it,
mm-hmm.
I think they do mention it in the movie. But I mean, I think also when they were promoting it, they were putting, Mothman was seen at all these places, and I'm going, I don't think that's true. And I think someone verified that they just kind of did it as a promotional thing for the movie.
Ah, okay, that makes sense. Because it seems very on the nose in the wrong kind of way.
Yes. And were you saying it was in the movie too, AP?
Yeah, I mean, they have that part kind of where Richard Gere's character meets the guy that had been investigating winged creatures, right? So he had
Leak.
a whole file on him and tries to, John Leak is the name. Just keel backwards. Yeah. So I think he opens up a book and just kind of goes they've been seen down through the centuries. You don't want to mess with this thing, But I actually have, it's not really in this book, but we were talking about Ted Holiday. A commonality between Mothman and Nessie is that when Ted Holiday was writing the Goblin universe, he started having a lot of high strangeness effects as well. There's some very Killian weird stuff happened to him, including visits from the Men in Black and stuff like that. So it's kind of interesting that and as Shiels alluded to in here, the troubles that he went through after being in contact with or engaged with the effort of discovering the Loch Ness monster. So interesting to consider the tangential phenomena, the high strangeness attached to any of these creatures,
Yeah, absolutely. It's all right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. You can go to wheredidtheroadgo.com for everything Where Did the Road Go related. All the links to our social media, our Twitter, Patreon, YouTube, Facebook, Discord, everything. Everything is up there, as is every show since the very first show in January of 2013. You can download them all. There's plenty of other material to look through as well, and it's all at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Follow us on Facebook, join the Facebook group, join the Discord, talk to us. If you want to contact me, the 3 main emails are contact@wheredidtheroadgo.com for general things, stories at wheredidtheroadgo.com. If you want to send us some stories for our listener stories show, booking at wheredidtheroadgo.com. If you want to come on the show because you're an author or a researcher and want to talk about your work, those are the best ways to get in touch. I want to thank everyone that listens to this show, that is hearing this, that has supported us in any way. And I particularly want to give a shout out to those Patreons pledging $10 or more. Chuck Shutters, Leanne Cherry, Allison Cook, Super Infra Man, CJ, Andrew Nichols, Matthew Sproul, Christine, a blue second-gen MR2 drifting around a Japanese mountain, Patricia Giaquinta, Alex Whitcomb, American Rambler, Andrew Maines, Ann Witowski, Barbara Fisher, Beverly Williamson, Big Boy Limina, Charles Davis, Charles in Florida, land of the crazy and communicable, Christopher Ernst, Craig Parmenter, Diane B., Edu Camahort, Empty K, Eric Todd, James Lattimore, Jim Pyre, Joanna Rojas, John Bracken, Carla Mahoney, Kevin Schreck, Cool Kitty, Kristen L., Laser Printer Jam, Lauren McLean, Linz Jackson K., Luke Osborne, MJ Armstrong, Jim and Sophie, Mark Brady, Matt in Delaware, Patricia W., Paul Jeffries, Ray Benedetto, Riker and Stark, Ron Dupree, Sam Sharon, Tactical Therapist, Taylor Bell, Thunderboy, Tyler Glimstead, Vincent Trewell, Walker, Will Gebhard, Will Powell, Ren Collier, Stephen D., and Amber Hall. Also a special extra shout out to Vincent Trewell, who does all the recaps of the shows that get posted on the website and YouTube. I thank you all so very, very much. This show would not be what it is without you. So we are back, and we're talking with AP Strange and about alien animals, and also Super Infra Man is here with me. Mm-hmm. And AP has actually read the book, unlike the two of us. I have a copy. I just haven't had a chance to read it yet, but you've read it a couple of times now, AP.
Yeah. And I was been going through it the last couple of weeks, just trying to pick out some of the best stories. So,
well, we have a little time left here. So, did you want to continue on the Owlman type of stuff, or you want to go for something else?
I wanted to double back to the lake monsters real quick. Okay. And then maybe like kind of a nice Bigfoot story.
Sure.
Yeah. It'll end on a happy note there. So this one's like one of the first stories in the book. Like I said, place names that are unfamiliar to me. This is Ireland, and I definitely can't do Ireland. It's spelled Nahooin. So Nahoon, I guess. Loch Nahoon.
Which is probably completely wrong.
Probably wrong. And when I tried to look this place up, it doesn't appear on Google, so they must have changed the name of the lake at some point.
Interesting.
But this story stuck with me. Like, it hits me pretty in a weird way, because I had a nightmare exactly like this when I was a kid. And I don't know if I read this story in a different collection or something, but this was one of the ones that Ted Holiday collected, and it's an Irish lake monster. At about 7 in the evening of 22nd February 1968, Stephen Coyne went down to the bog by the loch to bring up some dry peat. With him, he took his eldest son, a boy of 8, and the family dog. Although the sun had set, it was still quite light. On reaching the peat bed beside Nahoon, he suddenly noticed a black object in the water. Thinking it was the dog, he whistled to it. However, the dog came bounding along the shore from behind him. On seeing the object, it stopped and started barking. He then saw that the object was an animal with a pole-like head and neck about 9 inches to a foot in diameter. It was swimming around in various directions. From time to time, it would put its head underwater. 2 humps then came into view. Occasionally, a flat tail appeared. Once this came out near the head, which argued length and a high degree of flexibility. The thing was black, slick, and hairless with a texture resembling an eel. The dog's barking seemed to irritate the monster, and it began to move inshore, its mouth wide open. However, when Coyne strode over to support his dog, it turned away and resumed swimming around the little loch. At about this point, the little boy ran home to bring his mother to see the strange beast. When Mrs. Coyne and the children returned, the Peiste, an Irish name for water monsters, was busily patrolling the tiny lake. And I'm pretty sure I got that pronunciation right. This word is Peiste.
Yeah.
So that's an Irish word for like a beast or a monster, you know.
Okay.
Peiste. Both Mr. and Mrs. Coyne agreed that the creature was about 12 feet long, and both agreed they saw no eyes. Mrs. Coyne told us that she noticed 2 horn-like projections on the top of the head, whereas she thought the thing approached as near as 4 to 5 yards. Her husband felt that the nearest point was about 9 yards. Both agreed that the mouth was underslung in relation to the snout, and neither of them saw any teeth. Coyne described the mouth interior as pale. To and fro before the 7 members of the Coyne family strutted the Nahon dragon. As dusk was settling, they finally left it and made their way home over the bog. So, I mean, the thing's still swimming around. They just went home.
Huh.
But to your point earlier, Seriah, this Loch Nahon is only 100 yards by 80 yards, and its average depth is 20 feet deep.
Okay. And you said that word was P-I-S-T-E?
Peiste.
Oh, P-E-I. Okay.
Yeah. So I was thinking Peiste, like rhyming with beastie, but from what I could tell, it's actually pronounced Peiste, like something like that, Peiste. So, but it's just a Irish or Celtic word for like a monster or a beast of some kind. So
yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's pretty phenomenal to have like a 12-foot long, long-necked, horned creature in a loch that's only 20 feet deep for most of it.
So the definition of Peiste is a troublesome person or thing. Any type of deadly epidemic disease, especially bubonic plague.
Huh.
So beast works, a monster.
Okay.
That would remind me. This may have been a Carl Shuker story. I can't remember, where he had come across tales that basically sounded like eels that could migrate between bodies of water, kind of like a mud puppy or something like that. I'm trying to look for it on Google while we're talking, but I haven't found it yet. But the description made me think of that. But Ireland and those places are so weird anyway. Like there's so much stuff that happens. Like I would put it much more on something that's not real in the flesh and blood sense, but is very real in another sense.
I was going to say, like Saxon, you brought up earlier the idea of it being kind of a mollusk. I think that was where Ted Holiday was going with that, is that when you talk about the horny protrusions, it's kind of like slugs always have those 2 things sticking off the top of their head.
Like the eye stalks or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And if they're mollusks like that, they can maybe like squish down or just live under the peat bog, so that kind of makes sense. Or, some kind of magical being,
Right, right, yeah.
I'm also amused that they just kind of went home after that one sighting. Like it was still there. They were just kind of like, all right, I'm bored.
Well, it's getting dark, so.
Yeah.
It's like, what is that? It's time to go home.
Yeah. But no, I had a dream exactly like that when I was a kid, which was really weird. Like my dog was barking at the lake monster and it was coming towards us. And so I must have read that story as a kid or something. But,
or, it went back in time.
Yeah. And my reading it just traveled back to my childhood sleeping brain. But I was scared in the dream. I'm like, oh, lake monster's going to eat my dog, So,
sure.
So the one more I have, the note I made for it is Bigfoot befriends grandpa.
Okay.
I don't know if this was included in Tim and Josh's book, but it may have been. That occurred to me after.
That's all right.
So this was one of the Bigfoot stories from here. I wanted to include at least one. Let's see. It's from a Native American gentleman talking about a story his grandfather told him. And it's kind of a cool gifting story / just kind of becoming friends with Bigfoot. And he says the man's name was John Green, I guess. Sometimes Sasquatch would take food and leave things in exchange, and 2 accounts of injured men being carried back to camp by him. So this is a different guy. It says, it's the parlance of the time. An American Indian recalling in 1968 his or her grandfather's encounters with the Matacagni, in parentheses, Sasquatch, tells how he first met one in 1897 near his cabin home in the mountains near Toluca Lake, California. At dusk, he was walking along a trail and realized that what he thought was a bush was in fact a tall, hair-covered creature. Although it was growing darker, Grandfather was able to see quite clearly two soft brown eyes through a hairy head part. Then the creature moved slightly, and Grandfather made a motion of friendship and laid down the string of fish that he had been carrying. The creature evidently understood this, as it quickly snatched up the fish and struck out through the timber nearby. A few weeks later, Grandfather heard strange noises outside his cabin early in the morning, and when he looked, he found fresh deer skins ready for tanning. He heard in the distance a call which he had heard the Sasquatch make before. At other times, wood for fuel, wild berries, and fruits were left. Several years later, which would make it early in the 20th century, Grandfather acted as a guide for treasure hunting white men in the Mount Shasta area. While exploring alone, he was attacked by a rattlesnake. Grandfather killed the snake and started to come back down to a more comfortable spot, but soon found it difficult to go on. And as best as he can remember, he became sick at his stomach and fainted. When he came round again, he thought he was dreaming, for he was surrounded by 3 large Sasquatch about 8 to 10 feet tall. He noted that they had made a small cut on the snake bite and had somehow removed some of the venom and placed cool moss on the bite. Then one of the Matacogni made a sign of a kind of a grunting sound, and the other 2 lifted him up and took him down a trail that he didn't know about. Finally, after a little descent down the mountainside, they placed him under a low, bushy tree and left. So, yeah, it's kind of a chance meeting with a Bigfoot and giving Bigfoot some fishes ended up saving his life way later, because they found him after being bitten by a snake and saved his life. Wow. Okay.
And on Mount Shasta, no less.
Yeah, that's actually a nice little bonus there, is that it was on Mount Shasta. Yeah. That sounded like, I mean, it kind of made me think of some of the stories that I know Josh Cutchin has talked about with like gifting, Bigfoot gifting and exchanging stuff. So that's, I thought that would be kind of a cool story to round out things with, because it's not a scary one. It's actually kind of a pleasant one, you know?
Yep. But we still have more time. So is that all the notes you took off of it?
Oh no, I got more.
Okay.
I just see that we've been going for a while here, so I didn't know how long. Let's see. I have, there was one that I skipped over here. Oh, hold on. I got it. So this one was really weird. I didn't know what to do with it.
I like those.
Yeah, those are my favorite. So this said, people near Peevely in Jefferson County, Missouri tell of a ghostly white fox, which has been seen by many farmers and even by motorists on Highway 61 as recently as 1932. Albino foxes are not unknown in the Ozarks, but there was something very special about this one. It was quite tame and had been fired on many times at close range, but without result. Foxhounds seemed aware of its existence, but they would not chase it. Several persons believe that it could transform into a skunk at will. Others say that it actually saw it turn into a short-haired black and white dog with a stump tail. So, shape-shifting fox.
Yeah. Of course, it says it's quite tame, and then it's talking about people shooting at it. And I'm thinking, why are you shooting at it?
Yeah. Unless they considered it a pest. Like,
it does seem...
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a jerk move. Well, probably like, fox hunters, they're probably just hunting for... They're like, oh wow, an albino fox.
Yeah,
like, that'll fetch some money if I got a pure white fox hide,
Well, that fox seems friendly. Let's shoot it.
Yeah. Did they give a time period on that again, or did I miss it? Or
yeah, it said 1932 was the last time somebody saw it.
Okay. I mean, you can still have people doing like a lot of fur trapping and stuff in that area then, because it was, Appalachia, the Ozarks were both so remote, man. They were kind of on their own in a different world.
Yeah.
And plus people just shoot foxes if they raise chickens and stuff, because they don't want the fox eating their chickens, right?
True.
Exactly. Yeah.
True. Yeah.
But with a lot of the reports are like that with the black dogs, and I think, in Bigfoot cases too, people do try to shoot them, and either the gun malfunctions or like the bullets don't seem to have an effect at all.
Which is standard in a lot of paranormal cases with UFOs, with Bigfoot, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which again suggests
so it's
at
not
least
uncommon.
A similar type of phenomena, even if it's not exactly the same thing. It also leans away from the flesh and blood explanation.
Yeah. I always love the one of the early parts of the Skinwalker Ranch stories where the Gormans, or whichever name you want to use for the family,
see the giant wolves and shoot at them.
Oh yeah, and it does nothing.
Yeah.
It does nothing to them. Like they even see like the hair kind of move, but it's like the wolves just are like completely indifferent to it.
Yeah, that's wild. Some of the reports in here, it's almost like the bullet passes through and has no effect at all. Like especially with the black dogs, there are some where people actually tried to grab the dog or pet it, and their hand goes right through it. Like they have like they're a ghost, basically, no corporeal reality. So that's interesting too. But it's way scarier to me if you can see the hair flying back and the animal doesn't even seem to notice.
Yeah.
That's one tough animal right there. So.
Or it's not quite on the same reality.
Right. Well, here's another thing I made a note of, because this gets more into like the theoretical stuff behind the phenomena they're talking about, and they do kind of, like I said earlier, they entertain a lot of ideas that aren't necessarily. This one's particularly dated, though, in a way. So, and I think it's worth talking about that. They quote R. Martin Wolf here, that UFOs, BHMs, and other paranormal phenomena occur near microwave towers, high-tension power lines, nuclear power installations, hydroelectric dams, bodies of waters, missile silos, railroad tracks, and even mobile homes. Most of these having some association with electromagnetic energy. Wolf continues, combine the frequencies produced by an air conditioning unit with those from a television set. Add fluorescent lighting. Although we cannot visually observe the resulting electrical interference patterns, we can consider the fact that patterns produced by microwaves would undoubtedly behave very differently inside an aluminum structure, such as a mobile home, for example, than they would in the open air. If we had the capacity to measure and record our results, and if we could find a mind suitable to receive, register, and transmit the resulting energy interference pattern, we may very well have the formula necessary to create monsters.
Huh.
So this is kind of like a very 1970s idea, I think, that people seeing like pylons and electrical wires going up in areas where maybe they weren't before. And the idea of like electromagnetic fields and the introduction of microwave radiation from various different sources. Like, what is the cumulative effect of that? And the idea that interference from these electromagnetic patterns can actually manifest monsters, or maybe like poke holes in reality. Like, is that what's responsible for, a window area,
Yeah.
But that's that idea that I think you used to hear about more. You see in books from the late 70s and early 80s, and then that idea just kind of died. I don't know if I'm wrong about that. I
have a book. I want to say Barbara Fisher recommended it, but I'm not sure. I picked it up called Electric UFOs, which blames sort of like electrical pollution for like UFO sightings, which of course doesn't work fully, because what explains UFO sightings before electricity?
Yeah.
But I do think that, we don't know what these different waves, in everything from internet to phone service to electrical waves. I mean, we don't really know what effect that has on us. And I also think that that's why when people go out into the wilderness, they are, they're getting away from all that stuff, and they may have, poltergeist type experiences and stuff like that, and pick up on stuff that normally is being like almost blanketed out by a lot of these signals.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. See, that's a wild thought, right? Because I wonder now, it's like they're talking about electromagnetic interference from running an air conditioner and a TV at the same time inside of a mobile home. But nowadays, everybody has Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And like everybody has a smartphone in their pocket.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like maybe instead of producing the effects, as you say, it's actually tamping it down or keeping it at bay.
And it might be producing different effects at the same time that aren't like when we go out into the wilderness, we might be experiencing something more natural and real versus our brains being interfered with by all the different wavelengths and stuff from the electromagnetic spectrum in society.
Yeah.
It's stimulating those parts
really
of the brains. It's stimulating those parts of the brains, and it's kicking these experiences in. And not all of them, but maybe at times. I mean, we know that happens. I mean, there have been times where we found, some people have electromagnetic sensitivity and will have very weird experiences when they're around certain types of electronics.
Well, you have that with Kundalini too, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to say, you wouldn't know anything about that, which is right.
Well, but there are people who literally can't be around some of the stuff. Like, it bothers them. It makes them sick.
Oh, wow.
Right.
I remember Micah Hanks did one of the Grelian reports. He was talking about a case he actually investigated where they thought their house was haunted, and it turned out to be that the woman was just very sensitive to electromagnetic fields.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. There's
Crazy.
a lot going on, and it's hard to. It's near impossible, really, to kind of like filter out and say this is this and this is this. I think we're being hit by numerous things from numerous directions, and sometimes there's a perfect storm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what this guy in the book that they quoted was kind of alluding to, is that with the right combination of factors, you may, produce like a Birdman or a Bigfoot or just do. And sometimes there is natural electromagnetic radiation too. So
Absolutely.
some of what we think of as like thin places may have that particular cocktail built in already.
Watson's book on the fog made me think a lot about the right environment for creating stuff. Because there's recurrence. Of course, the whole book is about fog, so obviously there's recurrence in there. But I think what we talked about on the show was there somebody going down like a storm drain, and then the car just never came out again. But it was foggy, and I think the storm drain, I was like, that's like a Faraday cage, because I'm sure the whole thing's got rebar in there to hold up the concrete. And
right,
you start mixing things together, and you're like, yeah, it could have just blipped over for a little bit.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that, and that was one of the really weird ones in his book.
Yeah.
Is Watson having back? I think it's Watson. I have coming back on his new book on Canadian monsters, I think. He just contacted me yesterday. I think that's what it is. So he'll be back.
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
What was I just going to say? I also think with the way we perceive things, when we do experience sometimes these electromagnetic fields or bits of energy that our brain doesn't understand, doesn't know what to do with, it could be, like I've said early on, a wandering bit of consciousness floating around. And then our brain gives it an identity. Kind of like a tulpa in a sense, except it's not being directly created by us. It's something that's already there, but then it picks up information from our interpretation of it.
Yeah, it's a feedback loop in a way.
Yeah.
It's like takes on characteristics, collaborative almost in a way.
Right. I mean, there was David Weatherly talks about the one ghost that he investigated that, everyone has, people have pictures of this thing. It's, it's been experienced as the same entity by numerous people. And there's a whole story about who this person was. And he looked into it. He's like, oh, this person never existed.
Yeah.
So why are people seeing this,
The whole picture's created there. Yeah. Sorry.
And then you got the Philip experiment, of course, which is the more famous sort of scientific investigation of it, where they literally created a ghost, gave it a backstory and everything else. I mean, if we live in a world of information, then when you put that information into something, if it can cohere to it, we can literally create some of this stuff. It doesn't mean we're not experiencing something weird. It's just the way we see it might be defined by whoever sees it first.
Yeah, and then built upon too,
Yeah, I mean there are so many. Like, it's one thing when you have like I've said, Bigfoot in the Pacific Northwest. Okay, that's something that you could see being possible. There's so much woodland up there. It's conceivable you have a flesh and blood creature. The stories are similar when people encounter them. But in areas where there's no way a breeding population of these things could exist, there's no way that's a physical flesh and blood creature. But also when you have these one-off monster accounts where you look at you're like, okay, no one has ever experienced like this. This person had this one experience. It seems genuine, but nobody else follows it up. And it's kind of like, what is that? Was that their brain just slapping the image of a monster on something it didn't understand? It racks through its library when it comes across this weird energy and goes, I don't know. It's scary because I don't know what it is. Monsters are scary. We'll give it some horns and some wings and
or a frog head.
Yeah, exactly.
I was thinking like the Loveland Frog monster. Is that right? Yeah. Frogman.
Yep, the Loveland
Frogman, yeah.
Yeah, you never hear about that as a recurring monster anywhere else.
It happened twice though in the same place though, like 20 years apart, I think.
Was that what it was?
The first sighting of the Loveland Frogman is like in the 50s, and it looked totally different. It was like a lumpy, lopsided guy. There was like a couple of them, and it was like holding a wand or something.
Yeah.
And then there was another. The other one was in the 70s, where the police officer ended up shooting an iguana.
Oh, that's right.
And claiming that was the monster, but it didn't fit the description that they had earlier. So, but to your point about Bigfoot being in places that you wouldn't expect them, I do have a Japanese Bigfoot story that I set aside here.
Well, let's.
I figured
we're just
Saxon will appreciate this.
Well, we're just about out of time. Why don't we do it as a Patreon?
Okay.
So, AP, where can people follow you? Where can they find you?
Twitter is the best place to go find me because that's that's the social media I actually use. So you're welcome to try to find me elsewhere, but you won't see me post much. So just search AP Strange on Twitter. The blog is apstrange.com, and the podcast that I try to do with my co-host Shell when we can is the Eternal Void, but with jazz. So we got like one or two a month usually. So we've been slacking this month though. And Super Infra Man.
Yeah, I hang out on Instagram and Twitter a little bit more these days, but otherwise I'm here or the Discord.
All right. Well, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There is a lengthy Patreon segment for this show where we cover the rest of the notes that AP Strange made from the Alien Animals book. So if you're not a patron and you want to hear it, become a patron. It's only $3 a month. Helps us keep this show going. You also get the shows a week early. And I'll see you next time.
Are you fascinated by UFOs, the occult, strange history, and more? On October 14th through the 16th at SIR Nashville, the Strange Realities Conference 2022 will take place. 3 days of exploring the mysteries of the supernatural, history, UFOs, the occult, and much, much more. Featuring presentations by Steve Berg, Micah Hanks, John Tinney, Adam Gorightly, Tim Banal, Christopher Ernst, Samantha Engel, Recluse, Nathan Isaac, Melody Blackthorn, Dr. Future, Seriah Askath, Timothy Ritter, Aaron Goulias, Delaney Bowers, Olaf Phillips, and David Metcalf. With workshops by Kiki Dombrowski, Ren Collier, and Michael Hughes. Come join us in Nashville or online. Tickets are available at strangerealitiesconference.com. Find out what everyone is talking about.
We live our entire lives knowing that death awaits us. Many believe that some part of us endures. Eyewitnesses swear to have seen spirits of the dead haunting the living, and even appearing during alien abductions. Is the UFO mystery reaching out to us from beyond the stars, or from beyond the grave? This staggering implication demands not only scrutiny of the UFO phenomenon, but near-death experiences, ancient monuments, ley lines, the Feyfolk, cryptids, and more. I'm Joshua Cutchin. I'd like to invite you into the Ecology of Souls, a new mythology of death and the paranormal, a comprehensive theory of all things supernatural framed through the lens of our final transition. Join me as we journey from the depths of prehistory to the present, from the outer space of the cosmos to the inner space of the self. Ecology of Souls, Volumes 1 and 2, now available from Amazon in print and as a combined ebook. Welcome to the Ecology of Souls.
You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.